This is Talking Drupal, a weekly chat about web design and development from a group of people with one thing in common. We love Drupal. This is episode 312, Drupal Pod. Welcome to Talking Drupal. Today we are talking about Drupal Pod with Ofer Shaal. Ofer is a Drupal core maintainer working on the Umami demo and has been a member of the Drupal community since 2005. Thank you for that. He co-created Drupal Rector, which automatically generates code for updating major Drupal releases. Thank you for that. As a senior front-end developer at Phase 2, he creates accessible design systems by using web components. In addition to advocating for accessibility, Ofer enjoys incorporating cutting-edge technology into his work. Ofer, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Also joining us for the next 4 weeks is Tara King. Tara is a longtime Drupal contributor. Tara has been using Drupal since 2012. She's on the leadership team for Drupal Diversity and Inclusion and founded the Drupal Diversity and Inclusion Contribution Team, as well as the core mentoring team. Currently, she's working as the Director of Developer Relations at Automatic, working to make Gutenberg the best way to create content on the web. Formerly, she worked at Pantheon, Universal Music Group, and more. Tara, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
You are welcome. I am John Picozzi, and today my co-hosts are Nick Laughlin.
Welcome to the show, guys. This morning, there's an election in Worcester, so I went and voted. It's just for the district counselor to see who's going to represent my district. And it was kind of interesting. As I was leaving, I saw my congressman walking in to vote. So apparently he lives somewhere in the next few blocks of me. Obviously he's my congressman, so I knew he was local, but I didn't know he was in the same ward, of the same precinct, of the same district as I am. So kind of interesting. Met him a couple of times. Good guy. Keep an eye out. A lot of towns have elections a month or two before the general elections. I think this was not really a primary, but a special election because there were too many candidates for a couple of seats. So it's just a way to narrow down for the actual election in November.
Did you hammer him on the issues, or were you just like, hi?
He was going in as I was getting in my car, so I didn't chase him down and ask him any questions. But
got it.
But it was a bit surreal. I wasn't expecting him to be voting in such a small election, but apparently he cares about local politics too.
Voting matters, man. Everybody should vote in every election. Tara, what's going on with you this week?
Well, first I wanted to say I wrote my bio in such a way that it sounds like I founded core mentoring. And that's not true. A little dangling modifier there. I'm part of the core mentoring team. So I just felt like I wanted to say that first. As for me, I did just start my new job at Automatic a couple weeks ago. So it's just all consuming information and getting up to speed all the time. Basically learning everything that I know about Drupal, but about WordPress in a very condensed timeline. So it's been a fun and exciting challenge so far.
For our listeners, Automatic is a WordPress company. We let everybody come to the show. We talk about Drupal, but you can work on other things. And Tara's been in the community for a very long time. So also, Tara, don't feel bad. We say things and then correct ourselves 2 to 3 to 5 to 10 minutes later all the time. So you are fitting right in here.
Awesome. I'm glad I'm fitting in.
Ofer, what's going on with you?
Living in South Florida, I guess nothing much. Anchoring down, staying at home, staying safe.
Yeah, you're probably the only Floridian that is doing that, right?
Seems like it, unfortunately. But I did come across some very, very interesting a Drupal module that I would like to recommend. It's called Editorially, where Ali part is A11Y. And what's interesting about this Drupal module is that is focused on the content editors. A lot of accessibility recommendations would be developer oriented. This one is very user-friendly and give really nice notes as soon as someone saves a page. So the editor gets immediate feedback, or otherwise there's like an icon floating on a page when you logged into the site, giving you some tips. I think I even found like a core issue now when I tested it with Drupal core, something with the user page using H4 without any other heading. So that's a nice one. Another really good service that I've been using since I found it a couple of weeks ago called wordtune.com. What that does is, as you're writing things in your browser in any text field, paragraph by paragraph, it takes a couple seconds and it rewrites your paragraph in a more formal way. So as being born in Israel and not having English as my first language, I find this service incredible because it rewrites sentences in a much better way than the way I see them.
So it's similar to Grammarly, competitor to Grammarly, I imagine.
Yeah, although Grammarly is more about the grammar, and this one is really like using AI and bringing new concept and new words completely into the whole sentence. So when I write GitHub issues and things like that, all of a sudden I sound so much better.
Oh, that's cool. I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna have to look into that. For me this week, I actually got a demo towards the end of last week of Search Stacks, which is a managed Solr service, but they also have a site search component as well. So if you are a lover of Solr but not a lover of managing Solr, you can check out Search Stacks and the site search service as well, which provides you pretty interesting analytics. They have a Drupal module, and I'm currently working through getting kind of a demo set up. So it's interesting. It's relatively new to me, so it'll be interesting to see how that demo goes. And I will keep you updated, fellow listeners. Let's move on to the module of the week, and we're actually going to do something a little bit different this week. We had a listener, you may know him. He's one Stephen Cross, submit a module of the week. So going forward, listeners, if you would like to submit a module of the week, you can use the following recording as a kind of a template and send it in, and we'll be more than happy to talk about it. So here's Stephen with the redirect after login module.
Hey, Talking Drupal. This is Stephen here, longtime co-host, first-time caller. I'm so glad you guys brought the module of the week back into the show. I have a suggestion for one, redirect after login. It's a great, super simple module, but does some really good stuff. It basically redirects after someone logs in. Pretty creative, huh? So you can set it up to have based on role. So anonymous users, when they come to the site, they land on page A. Someone coming in as an authenticated user lands on page B. And global admin, say you have, lands on a different URL when they log into the website. Super helpful, easy to use. Check it out, redirect after login. That's my module of the week suggestion.
So redirect after login sounds pretty useful, and it's something that I kind of never really thought about. Wondering if anybody else has ever used the redirect after login module.
Actually, I have used redirect after login for a project that was using Drupal for a learning system. So the client actually uses Layout Builder to build learning modules, they call them, which wasn't confusing to me in any way coming from the Drupal world. But they wanted users, they would complete one learning step at a time, and they wanted the users to get directed to the last one that they haven't finished yet, or the next one that they haven't finished yet, rather, each time they log in. So this module made it really easy to essentially redirect them to a page that would then route them to the correct location and make sure that they weren't stuck on the homepage, which is what they wanted to avoid, because the entire site was behind login, so you could only see the homepage if you were anonymous. And once you logged in, you get sent to the next learning module.
So now I'm trying to figure out in my head. The default action for Drupal is you log in and it takes you to your user page, right?
Unless you're on a specific page. So if you try to do an action that requires login, you'll usually get redirected back there,
right.
I believe.
If the destination is set.
Yeah.
So
correct.
This basically redirects you to whatever page is set when you just do a regular login.
There's a couple of different behaviors, I think, that I recall. Like, I think, for example, you can say redirect to the home page or this specific page.
Got it.
Like I said, for this particular client, I redirected them to a page that ran a controller that determined what their next module was and sent them there. But yeah, it was incredibly simple module to configure and did exactly what it says.
All right, let's move on to our primary topic, talking about Drupal Pod, which, you know what? Let's start off with the softball of a question. Ofer, what is Drupal Pod?
So elevator pitch for the Drupal Pod allows us to start Drupal contributions in one click, literally. Drupal Pod would help you set a full Drupal development environment, which, as we know, is not necessarily something simple to do, that is oriented specifically to whatever issue you want to work on. Having Tara on the show today, WordPress, we're coming for you after.
Good to know. So what was the inspiration behind creating Drupal Pod? Because it doesn't look like it's the most simple thing under the hood, so to speak. So I imagine it takes a fair amount of effort to maintain. What kind of inspires you to begin the project?
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, or was mentioned about me, I really love bleeding edge technology, see how we can bring it. That's what led me to get Drupal Rector and things like that, and make them something that a lot of people are gonna be able to use, because there's few missing pieces. So I'm using packages or services that are out there that are already working, but putting all the connectors to have it. So in the last DrupalCon virtual, Dries had a special video talking about how long or how complex it is for a new contributor to find where they can contribute when they want to make some update to Drupal. So it shows a very lengthy video that is edited in a funny way, and it ends up like, okay, finally the person found the issue page, which made me think right after, well, that's funny. Like, that was actually the easy part. Now that you know where you should start your contribution, how do you get this whole environment set up? That's the real complex part. So these 15 minutes are actually the short part of the process. And then knowing about ephemeral environments and playing with GitPod service, which does exactly that, full development environment in the cloud. I was like, oh, there's a real issue here of Drupal. As being a Drupal core maintainer, I know how difficult it is. So even if you work on Drupal websites for clients, working on core, setting up that environment is very, very different. So being able to utilize that and making it so easy to start contributing and fixing that part that was missing since when I watched Dries Note, that's what inspired me for creating Drupal Pod.
It's interesting because I remember that Dries Note, and I remember watching that person trying to solve a problem on Drupal.org, like resolve an issue. And I just remember thinking, oh man, this is taking him so long. And there'd be parts of the video where he's like, well, now I got to go back here and do this other thing. And now I got to come back and try this. And I was just like, oh man, there's got to be an easier way. So just to be clear, I'm going to drop in a question here. We were talking about what is Drupal Pod. Essentially, it's a Drupal environment in the cloud, right? There's no like local setup for you to muck with, so to speak, right?
Right. So Drupal Pod brings a list of benefits to how we can do things, and it's a list of different technologies bundled together. from a browser extension I created that know how to read Drupal.org issue pages, to utilizing GitPod, which is the main service where everything runs, the servers and everything, which is free for up to 50 hours, which means a lot of people would be able to just use it with no problem at all. Recently added VS Code extension that would allow us to create better tour and welcome pages for new contributors that never saw GitPod, DrupalPod, all these environments. It utilized DDEV because DDEV allow us to make changes in the environment in just one line. What PHP version would you like? Or would you like to add a Solar engine? So all these things, very easy. At the same time, DDEV allows us to use this same setup locally if someone chooses not to work in the cloud. Then Joachim created from the community a special repo to help people getting Drupal core contributions. So I'm utilizing that part of technology as well in there, because you can use DrupalPod for core issues or modules or themes, and there's a different way to work on these things.
This is so awesome. When I went to DrupalCon Portland in 2012, I sat down for my first sprint, and I was not really a coder, and everybody was like, "It's okay, anybody can contribute." And I spent the entire day working on a local environment because I couldn't figure it out. And so this is really cool because I feel like actually a lot of how I became a developer was through core mentoring and people helping me. So anyway, I just am super, super impressed. And I was wondering, who is maintaining DrupalPod?
That's me. So for now, DrupalPod, yeah, but recently got some also help from Matt Radcliffe and other people. Definitely Randy Fay, the person behind DDEV, helping a ton to figure out. I remember when I first told them, like, hey, is there a way to run DDEV in GitPod, which means Docker in Docker and things that a year ago we were like, what are you talking about? This is not possible. But slowly, we're able to absolutely make it possible. So I maintain it, but I would love to bring more people into it. I've been showing it around in the Drupal community, trying to go to different Drupal camps, DrupalCons, whatever possible to show people what I believe DrupalPod being a game changer of how we do things and the amount of time it's going to save from just the setup people need to go through before they can actually do any kind of contribution, whether it's writing code or testing a patch or anything like that. So it does come to make it all simple. So for now, I'm mainly maintaining it, but would love the help and support of everyone that want to join.
Well, speaking of the amount of time that you save, what's the average time? Say you have GitPod set up, or DrupalPod set up, and GitPod set up, and you see an issue that you can help out with. For the listeners, there's a little extension that you have. You click on the extension, you can choose which branch you want, which patch you want to work with. What's the average length of time it takes once you click the open environment to get the environment spun up and working? Just to give our listeners kind of a baseline.
I believe when I made the test and checked the time, it's between 30 to 60 seconds. So for anyone that want to try it out, DrupalPod.com would take you directly to the repository that have a hopefully simple to understand README file that tells you all you need is to install this browser extension, either for Chrome or Firefox. Once you have that, go to Drupal.org, any issue page, can be core modules or themes. Click on the extension, you'll get a drop-down that find what kind of contribution it is, whether core module theme. It supports both patches and forks, so you can choose how you want to work. You choose installation profile. Do you want minimal, standard, nothing, or umami? And you click the big button there. And from when you click on that button, 30 to 60 seconds, you'll have your full environment ready to start working with a preview of the website, of the Drupal site, with the module you want to work on and the theme you want to work on right there in front of you. And again, from the user point of view, you need to bring a browser and install the extension. Nothing else. You don't need any software because everything happens in the cloud, not even in your browser. So it's not like your CPU is running extra hard or something. It's really happening on servers that are not your computer.
Somebody else's CPU
Oh, wow.
is running really hard somewhere else, right? Perfect.
Right.
So we kind of talked through how DrupalPod works for, the end user, right? The average person trying to get it going. I'm wondering if you can dig in a little bit. Once I install the browser extension, right, and I find an issue and I say, hey, spin this up in a Drupal, a Drupal pod instance, like what's happening kind of under the hood? Like you talked about a couple of different technologies, GitPod, DDev, there's even a code editor extension. Like how are those all kind of playing together under the hood to kind of bring you this full featured development environment in the cloud?
Okay, so because I was a one-man show, I had to use some tricks. Definitely inspired by Simply Test Me. That was right, like an amazing way to check out things and test patches and click on Drupal Umami and see a demo of it opening up. But the code under Simply Test Me is very complex. It allows so many things to happen. I didn't have enough time or knowledge to do that. So the trickery I use is that extension that reads the Drupal page, because I realize in the issue page that I'm reading, there's probably everything I need to create an environment. Mm-hmm. Now there's a bunch of scripts, shell script that I created that look into the choices the user made and building that environment. So we're taking, in general, a composer JSON. There's one for core and one for all the rest because of that special requirement of core. We're looking if it needs to add patches or issue forks that are being enabled before creating a site for you, because many patches are affecting how the site even will be built up together to change it. Yeah. And DDev is running to allow us this easy to change if all of a sudden you need, we have actually PHP 8.1 was about to come out, and together with Drupal 10 around the corner, all these things, there's already a one-click DrupalPod link people can use to test PHP 8.1 with any Drupal version. So like that would allow sometimes complex or unknown to many people, because who tried here PHP 8.1 that was not released yet. One person creates a setup, other people have a link to click on and start working on making changes, updates, whatever that needed.
Oh, that's really cool. So you've mentioned a couple of times that one of the integral portions of this is the browser extension. And I'd like to dive into that a little bit, because I use browser extensions all the time for a lot of things, but I've never met somebody that's actually made one. Could you just like give me a quick overview? What's it like? For example, how do you submit it? How do you update it? What language is it written in? I'm really curious about the extension.
Sure.
What that experience is like.
So yeah, like I knew DrupalPod can be done, but then, okay, I got to make it. So I learned how to create, Google Stack Overflow. How do you make an extension? I love using JavaScript vanilla, because I'm the one who created the first issue about let's remove jQuery from Drupal finally, because JavaScript now is so advanced and there's almost no benefit for jQuery. So I was like, I'm going to write this whole thing in vanilla JavaScript. So note to self, do not do that, because as someone told me before, if you don't use a framework, you're going to end up writing one. So I realized when I create drop downs and things like that, there's so much markup and additional code I had to write to deal with interactive input from the user, where my next iteration of the extension going to be switching it into Vue, because it makes, in my opinion, the code very readable. People who do not know Vue would get it right away without all that interaction. But in general, to create a browser extension, there's a manifest JSON that needs to be there both Chrome and Firefox know how to work with them. There is a manifest version 3 that Chrome came up with, and Firefox didn't like because Chrome does their things. So they're trying to find a middle ground. So in the meantime, we're using manifest version 2. There are a bunch of permissions that you need to define there. Like, I'm going to access the background. I'm going to access this website. The user only going to be able to use it on Drupal.org and not others. So you create that in the manifest JSON. You create some JavaScript of that drop-down pop-up simple screens. And eventually you bundle it up. I use the Firefox development package to help me test it while I develop it. And when I have it packaged, you go to, there's a Chrome store and there's a Firefox extension library, and you submit them. And within a few hours, they're being approved, which was a great, interesting surprise how fast it can happen.
That's interesting. Yeah, like I said, I use tons of extensions or even Chrome apps, and I've always kind of in the back of my mind wondered what it's like, and to hear that it's really just essentially JavaScript and submitting it, that's pretty interesting. There's always this kind of false sense of like it's too complex, and to hear, DrupalPod is a great contribution for getting people to contribute. And even when you were getting started, you went to Stack Overflow to find out how to do it. So it wasn't like, you're obviously a very talented developer, but it wasn't like you knew the solution already. You found a problem and then, followed the same process that most developers do. Is like, okay, I know I have a problem to solve. Google, tell me how to do it. So for our listeners, if you have an idea and you have a problem that you want solved, try it out, get started. Feel free to share it.
Yeah.
So another thing that I'm curious about, because I think I first heard about DrupalPod from Tim Lennon, actually, from the Drupal Association. He mentioned that it was an up and coming project. I'm curious about, and I know that there's a DrupalPod channel on the Drupal Slack. I'm curious about the people that are using it. Do you find, I know its initial purpose is to make it easier for new contributors to get involved. Do you find that's happening, or do you find that people that are already contributing are using it because it's just an easy way to spin something up? Who are the people using DrupalPod?
Great question. So if I follow the statistics of Chrome extension and Firefox extension downloads of DrupalPod, I believe it's over 100 now. And my big question in my mind is like, I know we have a game changer here that everybody can use right away. There's almost no obstacles to start using it. How do you make it popular? Which hopefully also coming to Talking Drupal is a way, because my dream of DrupalPod is helping both newcomers. So you don't need to start to spend hours setting up an environment that's supposed to be quick and easy, and we have all these great tools, but there's always something in the system, or maybe it's a company laptop and you're not allowed to install. So there's like so many issues here, which, by the way, even the browser extension, one of the recommendation I got from other community members was, let's make a page that behave like the extension using probably the same code of the extension. So there's one less thing needs to happen there. So people will just open a page, don't even need to install an extension. Another thing on my wish list is that Drupal.org would officially adopt it by having it in the page itself, because these are links in a browser and people can click on things and get there. So instead of someone installing an extension, if Drupal.org would be able to put a label there or start with DrupalPod, that's all that is needed, and lowering the barrier. So newcomers is one thing. Where I really want to excel as well is how do I get the old timers to use DrupalPod, because they definitely have already this whole setup ready and everything. But trying to bring additional features to DrupalPod, and how easy it is to run core tests. And by the way, many times it's surprising for people. You can even run PHP Storm in the browser when using DrupalPod. So if that's your favorite IDE and you really enjoy developing Drupal using PHP Storm, it is possible in DrupalPod. But the benefit of DrupalPod is the setup happens once, and then everyone going to benefit from that setup. So if running core tests, talking to different people in the community, I saw each person has their own techniques, shell scripts, shortcuts, or how they magically run core tests, because it's not an easy thing to run or to configure PHP Storm to do that. So using the help of the community, we're going to bring all that to everyone. So someone who never tried it before would have one click on PHP Storm or run one word in the CLI to start running core tests without knowing all the gadgets.
So where does that kind of get stored? Is that GitPod magic, or is that something that, they just see like, hey, this image has been created before, so we're going to reuse it? How does that?
Sure. So
how does that happen?
Yeah, so GitPod is the main server. That's the other people's CPU that's running. And they're an amazing group that came from a company called Typefox. They created a Thea code editor. They're a strong believer in open source. So that's why everyone gets 50 hours every month for free to use it, which I believe for most contributors, that'll be plenty of time. But if you find that you need more, you can apply there for professional open source and get unlimited time of using it. So GitPod needs a YAML file that tells GitPod what kind of environment should I set up for your project. What's special about DrupalPod that wasn't done before, as far as I know, in GitPod, is that I call it a wrapper project. So the main usage of GitPod is a project would put GitPod YAML in the project, similar to how Tagboat YAML is being added to project, and then Tagboat knows what to do with it. Okay. DrupalPod has its own YAML file, and then and then all the scripts that are running to bring all the extras that are needed. So yeah, I don't know if I explained it correctly, but so GitPod has a YAML file for the setup, but in DrupalPod we add additional shell scripts to put all the pieces together.
Okay. And where do you store that information? Is the shell script just part of the Chrome extension, or do you have like a server yourself that's kind of an in-between?
So that's what I call the wrapper repo. If you'll go to drupalpod.com, it will take you directly to the repo of DrupalPod. So you will see a project not so big with some .gitpod directory where I hold all the information, templates, and things I need. You'll see a .vs code directory that saves all the VS Code extension and setting that is recommended when doing Drupal development already built in. So like I saw a page on Drupal.org that says, here's what's recommended to say, how do you set up your VS Code for Drupal contributions or Drupal work in general? DrupalPod benefit is we set it up once, we save that VS Code directory, and everyone benefit from that setup.
That makes sense now. I understand. That's actually really clever too, because like you said, you're kind of a one-man show maintaining this right now, but it makes it so that the maintenance of it is kind of a one-time thing. It sounds like that's really clever. I'm impressed. I like it.
That's pretty awesome. Coming to you from a neighboring open source community, I'm curious, how much of DrupalPod is open source?
I guess 100%. I'm not sure like how to measure that. Like there's nothing there that is not open source. Even the extension, even that right now it's in a different repo, and I promise as soon as I convert it to Vue in the next few days or weeks, it will become part of that main repo. So it's very easy for other people to look into it, submit PRs or feature requests. So yeah, DrupalPod is absolutely open source. GitPod, by the way, itself, the service is open source as well. Like if someone want to do that same thing, but don't want to have it over there, they can create their own servers. They have guides of here's how you take our code and build it. Also to mention, people probably heard by now on GitHub code spaces. That's a direct competitor or GitPod. And it's all about
Right.
creating general development environments in the cloud. Right now, code spaces is limited only for GitHub teams and to certain level, and definitely not open source. Yeah, but I was happy. I tried getting access to GitHub code spaces, but was not accepted yet. So it probably could happen through that as well, but right now it's not open for people and I don't have access, so that's why it wasn't done there.
If of our listeners happen to be a higher up at GitHub and want to help Ofer, I'm sure he would accept the help. So we've talked about a lot of the features of DrupalPod. I'm wondering if there are any features that we haven't talked about yet.
Funny that you ask. Yes, there's like bazillion features. I try to make a little document so I don't forget anything. So we mentioned that we are supporting all the things in the extension and there's future plans. When you get into the environment, you can choose using VS Code or PHP Storm IDE. You can share your IDE. So if I work on a core, so now unfortunately, we have a lot of virtual events instead of being able to meet each other. But it means that if we have contributions and I'm a new contributor or a contributor, and I have a problem, I can send Nick a link and he can get into my virtual machine, both of them not running on anyone's computer, and we can work on things together instead of me explaining what I see or just share my screen. So sharing the IDE itself is incredible. If you haven't tried that kind of pair programming, highly recommended. Very, very simple to do when you do that. GitPod also help us. Some people, I see a lot of fear when people moving from local to developing in the cloud. What if I lose internet? You're also not going to be able to use Google and Stack Overflow. So what do you do? And so exactly. I think the majority that's is being solved there. But if you if your machine got stopped, closed, whatever, any workspace you started in GitPod stays there for 14 days. So whatever you did and you forgot to push commit save 14 days. If you decide to pin the workspace, which is one of the options in the dashboard of GitPod, it will stay there indefinitely.
Wow.
People have some fears about, okay, so we're going to do in-person contributions soon, one day. And what about the internet requirement of such a thing? And actually, I measured it. And instead of people running Composer install, downloading megs or npm install when you want to do front-end stuff and things like that, the internet requirement is 5 megabytes of interface need to be loaded once. After that, the browser has it cached and doesn't use that network anymore. And after that, it's very, very small bits because of the keystroke that you made. So it's going to be a huge improvement for lowering the network requirements. And another huge piece of feature that I hope would gain more traction very soon is called Snapshots. I'll explain Snapshots because I think it's part of that game changer. CK Editor 5 supposed to come into core. So there's like this big patch that need to be applied, but then you also need to switch a few things in the extension code. Like you need to know a few things before you get that package to run. So I opened DrupalPod, starting from that issue page of CK Editor 5 going to core. I made the updates in the database of disabling CK Editor 4, bringing CK Editor 5. And now that I had a working environment, I clicked on the snapshot feature. Snapshot feature give me a new link that is an exact copy of my environment. It is not my environment, but it's the exact copy, including database. And I post that in Drupal.org issue.
Okay.
Then came a MongoDB user, WebChick, and instead of trying to figure out how to get this whole CK Editor 5 set up, was able to click on that link, get the whole environment open, and start testing how CK Editor 5 works with core. and found a few bugs. So the snapshot feature, what's amazing about it is if I have a complex setup before someone can even test what I did, I can create that setup and share a snapshot. Or if I found a bug, there's no longer need for, can you replicate how you got there and figuring out 10 steps of, I don't know, something happened. You take a snapshot, anyone else will be able to get to the exact copy of your workspace. So the whole replicate the steps is no longer needed. Other person can come and see it as is and find the issue.
Yeah. So, I mean, I imagine that like that reduces the replicate steps, right? As far as like, instead of like install this version of this and do this and do that, it's like, click on this link, enter this text here, do this thing, press submit, bam, the site fails massively. There's a problem, right?
Exactly.
That's pretty awesome. I think when you look at that feature set, especially the peer coding aspect of it, like that's super cool as well, right? Because that's one of the biggest hurdles, I think, is peer programming. Like, hey, here's a link to my server, or here's a, look over my shoulder while I'm zooming. Now you can just say like, hey, here's this link. We can both work in the same space, and it's far more collaborative. So that's pretty cool.
Couple more features.
Keep on going, please. Don't let me stop.
Xdebug out of the box. How long it takes to get Xdebug working, both VS Code and PHP Storm. There's nothing you need to set up. It's already there. You type ddev Xdebug, that tells ddev, okay, Xdebug is here. You click the breakpoint of where you want it, enable debug, and it's done. You'll get all that information, which again is huge. ddev give us some ability to run xhprof, Blackfire, different profiling if you want to do using PHP MyAdmin, Mailhog. It's all built in and part like this zero setup to get it. And I also created, I know it's a fairly new feature, the issue forks, but I think it's amazing when you try it. I tried it. It was actually really, really easy. So when you'll open DrupalPod, one of the things it will tell you is you can set up your SSH access. So the idea is that in an issue on Drupal.org, if you enable issue fork for that issue, you would have a one-time setup of your SSH access, which means your GitPod user connect to Drupal.org user. So it's nothing to do with your machine or other things you have access to. And once you have the SSH access, when you'll open any new DrupalPod environment, you can type git push. So git add, git commit, git push, and whatever you made, the changes you made, instead of download a patch and upload it to Drupal.org, from the terminal there, you will type git push and it will go directly to that issue fork that you work on.
Wow. So every question I've had is already a feature in DrupalPod is what I'm hearing.
You forgot one feature, the feature where like I drop my laptop into a swimming pool or a bathtub, and then I just go get a new laptop, open it up, and like start coding again because everything's saved in the cloud.
Yes, absolutely. I spoke to a few people in the community that all of a sudden their main machine broke down and they were able to use an old machine. Running Drupal and Docker and things like that can be a very CPU intensive. Over here, you need a browser with bad internet and you'll still have a great experience. When I run Drush site install, it runs faster than my very cool MacBook Pro can do it.
Wow. So I guess the thing on the top of my mind is, is there a way to integrate this with a project? Because it sounds like this is really good for contribution. And it sounds like, I mean, Tugboat provides some of this functionality for, feature-based branches and environments. And John and I are both wearing Tugboat shirts, so big fans of the service. But I'm wondering if there's a way to integrate a specific project into something like this. For example, I'm creating a patch for a client and I want to create kind of like a fork, or a private environment that has that patch applied that I can test and then share with my client. Tugboat's one way to do that. But if there's a way to create that kind of from an issue queue that's just more convenient, I could see that being, some sort of paid feature, something that would, help fund some development. Is that something that you've thought about, or is there a roadmap for DrupalPod?
Well, yeah, I'm too much into open source, and I need to find more monetary way to do things because Drupal development is complex. Setting up DrupalPod was very complex. Bringing client projects into this environment is way easier. I know of a company based in Australia, Reality Loop. When they found out about GitPod, DrupalPod, as far as I know, they switched all their client projects into that. Because what's nice and easy about a client project working with that, GitPod has a concept called pre-builds. Pre-builds mean that installation, composer installed, import the database, all the things that takes time, but you need them every time you create a branch in a PR. Pre-builds happen in the background. The next developer or person that need to test something, click on a link, the pre-builds already run, and now they have the ready-made, the setup ready for them to start using it. So in a client project, when you're making an update and creating a PR for that, pre-build is running in the background, probably take 5 minutes. The developer that's ready to test the PR, click on the link, the client project opens up in the cloud with the latest feature, latest database, everything's ready to just start either test it or continue working on that branch. So I can't wait to get phase 2 to use everything move it into GitPod and in the cloud, but it is a whole mind shift. But the nice thing, because it's using DDEV, is it would still allow the freedom for developers who do not want to do things in the cloud to use the exact same project with DDEV local. So it's the same setup, and you choose whether you want to run it locally or if you want to run it in the cloud. Yeah, so I don't know if I answered the question there.
No, you definitely answered it. So I guess a follow-up question is, you've mentioned a couple of future changes that you're working on. For example, you're rewriting the extension in Vue. What other improvements are kind of on the roadmap for you? Do you have a public roadmap, or is it just kind of plans that you have set aside that you're working through?
There should be. So if you go to DrupalPod repo, you'll see a list of issues there. But I need to populate these issues with a much more detailed list so people can see what they want to take on or help with and give feedback. But some of these things would be improving support for core tests, improving support of PHP Storm integration, supporting profiles and distributions, similar to how we do modules and themes. So why not adding profiles and distributions? Similar to Dreditor, also allow the extension to be in the page and not just something on the browsers that people might forget about. A future wish list of my own is having GitPod YAML in Drupal core, but Drupal core needs to go through certain things before that's even possible because of the complexity of developing of core itself. And what else we have there? Yeah, and hopefully being adopted officially by Drupal.org, so people wouldn't need the extension. As much as I love writing code, it's even better when more people can just use it right away without needing certain things. And I'm thinking, don't know, I would love to get feedback from the community of creating a DrupalPod general project in Drupal.org to get more visibility to see, because DrupalPod not being a module, so it's code that sits in GitHub, but perhaps making it a project in Drupal.org for more communication, but I'm not sure yet how that's going to be.
I'd encourage you to do that, because you can create community projects. Like for example, we have one for Talking Drupal. So you could certainly create a community project that doesn't actually have the code on it if you just wanted to raise awareness or have a place for people to hear about it. Because I think there's work on having more generic external projects as modules, or not modules, but as projects on Drupal.org. But at the minimum, I think a community project would definitely fit, because then you could credit people if they contribute. And like you said, that's kind of the way that people find stuff in the Drupal community is there. So I'd be in the +1 column for creating a project on Drupal.org.
Thank you.
So I have a really easy question here. Just out of curiosity, where did the Drupal Pod logo come from? Who created that?
So I started it. I wanted to do stuff with wings and things like that. My sister-in-law is a designer, and she moved it into what you see now.
That's the name of the game, Drupal, keeping it all in the family.
I do like the logo. It's
Yeah.
It's pretty unique. You know, a lot of Drupal projects have Drupal centric ones, but I kind of like it. It's kind of like a phoenix or like a meteor, maybe.
Yeah,
kind of like it.
Thank you.
Yeah. I know you mentioned earlier wanting help with DrupalPod. So how can people get involved with DrupalPod?
I think the easiest way, we have a DrupalPod Slack channel on the Drupal Slack. So where I would post more updates, people would ask questions or feature requests. If you go to DrupalPod.com, you'll get directly to the repo. Over there, you can create issues for bugs that you found, feature requests you would like to see, or submitting your own PRs. So any way people can help with it. I created a sponsor page. I use a lot of my free time because I'm passionate about this, but my wife gonna be so happy if people can sponsor it too. And yeah, any way people can help by testing it, by trying it, by spreading the word. What I wish to see is in the future contribution days, people would be able to cut all the time of setting up to just, here's how we do it. We use the extension, you click here, you start contributing.
Yeah, that'd be ideal for sure. So before we close out the show, I wanted to change gears a little bit and kind of ask you, you've mentioned a couple of times about, one of your dreams kind of is to have it on Drupal.org. And it's my understanding that you were involved in the Drupal Rector project, which our listeners are probably familiar with, because that's, semi-been integrated with the Drupal.org as well. Almost every Drupal 8 module has a Drupal Rector patch, making it ready for Drupal 9. And I've certainly used those patches extensively and built upon them myself. So I've benefited massively from that project. So I want to thank you for that. But I'm curious what that process is like, getting something kind of so intricately involved on Drupal.org, because it sounds like it's something that you've done before. You're trying to do that again. It might be a little bit different here because that one was, you could kind of just connect to the API and post those issues, whereas this one might be a little bit more intricate. But I'm wondering what that process was like.
So it was an exciting project, but I have a lot of, you're right, like I believe there were so many similarities I realize, Drupal 9 is coming and there's all this deprecated code and what are we going to do with it? And there's so much work to do. But at the same time, it seems like there's so much work that, can a computer do that instead? And then looking around and found Gabor, I think, pointed me at an existing project that was kind of a proof of concept of what took a project called Rector and showed how it can be utilized in Drupal Rector. Back at the time, I was working for Palantir, and Palantir, which still supporting it completely and making it a huge contribution in the Drupal community, saw it as an opportunity we can really help the whole community here and put development hours. Dan Montgomery was helping a lot. It was amazing to see. So I didn't have so much of the back end of Drupal knowledge to make it happen, but I knew it can happen, but we just need to put a few things together, get people understand what an opportunity we have here. And recently I saw, again, one of the things I dreamed about before, that hopefully officially Drupal deprecation code as we go in the future would already come with a Drupal Rector code in it. And for those who don't know, what Drupal Rector does is it's teaching Drupal Rector, it's giving it different set of rules and saying, here's a code that was deprecated, it was used like this before, here's the new way that it's looked like. It is not a search and replace, it's a way more complex way using AST, super clever and incredible. Rector itself allows people to move from PHP 6 to PHP 8. Like it can do a lot of these things automatically with the help of Drupal Association, and Palantir also and Acquia created a bot that actually utilizing what Drupal Rector knows to do, looking at all the issues and modules and see, okay, what kind of code can we automatically generate? So then we want a human there to see and approve it of, yes, this works for me. But I can't imagine the amount of work that was saved by not trying to do the same kind of fixing deprecations of each one of the thousands of modules. And I see it was great before Drupal 9. I think Drupal 10 going to be even bigger success of how everything is ready. And that's how there's so much in parallel to me with DrupalPod and Drupal Rector, where I was like, this is going to be a game changer because the more people going to use it, the more everyone going to benefit from it. And I hope the same to see at least the same amount of adaptation for DrupalPod.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say Drupal Rector, like that bot, I think probably saved more time than any single project in Drupal, other than, using Drupal, not having to build a CMS from scratch, I mean, for Drupal developers, I think, like I said, I've used it, either that patch itself or that patch as a basis of updating modules dozens of times.
I think Ofer's
being able to see.
Drupal.org page should have a counter on it of how many hours he's saved people over the course of like the Drupal project between Drupal Rector and Drupal Pod. Like it just keeps going. I think both of those things are definitely saving people time and making Drupal more approachable, which is awesome. Ofer, thank you for joining us. It was really great to have you on the show and talk about Drupal Pod. We appreciate your time.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
And for our listeners, do you have questions or feedback? You can reach out to Talking Drupal on Twitter with the handle Talking Drupal. You can reach out using an email at show@talkingdrupal.com, and you can connect with our hosts and other listeners on the Drupal Slack in Talking Drupal channel. If you're interested in show news and updates, sign up for our newsletter at talkingdrupal.com/newsletter.
Did you know you can promote your Drupal camp on Talking Drupal? Learn more at talkingdrupal.com/camp promo.
And thank you, patrons, for supporting Talking Drupal. Your support is greatly appreciated. You can learn more about becoming a patron at talkingdrupal.com and choose the Become a Patron button. And patrons get a little bit of the before and after show in a private feed.
Today, patrons would get to the point in which Nick and I realized we were wearing the same shirt. So that's something fun that you can get for becoming a patron. So we're closing out the show right now. Ofer, if people wanted to get a hold of you or contribute to Drupal Pod, how would they go about getting a hold of you to do that?
One of the easiest way to get a hold of me is on Drupal Slack. My username is Shaal, Shaal. You can email me, Shaal Ofer, that's SHAALOFER @gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter as Shaal as well. In the repo of Drupal Pod, I'd love to get more people and help other people when they want to bring that kind of technology into their projects.
Cool. Tara, you made it through your first Talking Drupal. Congratulations. You did great.
Thank you.
As a guest host. And if folks wanted to contact you, how would they go about doing that?
I am Sparkling Robots everywhere. So Sparkling Robots on Twitter, Drupal.org, Drupal Slack, all the things. You can also email me at tara.king@automatic.com if you want to talk about anything, really.
It's funny. Sparkling robots is such a lovely visual. Like I just think of very, very clean and functional robots.
They're the best robots.
They are. Nick Laughlin, how about you, sir?
You can find me pretty much everywhere at Nixvan, NICXVAN.
And per the usual, I am John Picozzi. You can find me on all the major social networks and Drupal.org at John Picozzi. And if you're interested in EPAM, you can find out about EPAM at epam.com.
If you've enjoyed listening, we've enjoyed talking. See you guys next week.
Have a good one.